had a bit of a technical hiccup. It's nothing to do with the beta software that I'm running. We have still got a few seats down the front here for the people that are standing. If you've got a seat beside you, just put your hand up. Just make it easy for the people to find some seats. So we'll just shuffle along so they can get in. So it's a bit of a packed house, which is great. Okay. Cool. So hopefully you guys are in the right session. So what we're going to talk today about is what's new in SharePoint Server 2013 Part 1. Now, you're probably thinking, why are we doing this Part 1 and a Part 2? Well, the simple reason behind this was that, SharePoint Server 2013 is a huge, huge release. And it was quite hard to actually think about what would be the actual highlights to actually give you a bit of a sample about, what are the key things that are really quite cool about this product. So I thought about trying to do it into one session and then came to the conclusion that this was almost going to be impossible. So I decided to break it up into two sessions to give you a Part 1 and then a Part 2. So this is the Part 1 session. So the first thing is, who exactly am I? So my name's Wayne Newington. I'm a principal consultant working for Microsoft New Zealand. I've been with Microsoft coming up for about 12 years now. For those of you that know me, my employment at Microsoft hasn't quite been continuous. About 4 years ago, I left for 6 months, and as my colleagues try to remind me, Microsoft made the mistake twice by rehiring me. Very nice. I've been kicking around with SharePoint back to the old Tahoe and Encompass Resolution version 4 days. So does anybody know what that is? Okay. A good product. Fantastic. Well, Tahoe was the code name for SharePoint Server 2001, and Encompass Resolution version 4 was the name of the company and their product that we purchased, which then became Microsoft Content Management Server, which was a fantastic product which I used to love and enjoy. So I've had a bit of a love-hate relationship with SharePoint as a consequence of that. So I used to really enjoy doing Content Management Server work, and then this thing called SharePoint came along, and then they merged the Content Management Server team into the SharePoint team, and I went, oh my God, what have they done? It actually turned out quite well, so it got to the point where I decided to dedicate predominantly to doing SharePoint work, where I went up and did my Microsoft Certified Master certification, bit of a mouthful, on SharePoint Server 2010. Basically became the first person in New Zealand to get that. In fact, I'm still the only living or resident person in New Zealand that's got that certification. And basically came, I think, about the sixth person at the time. Subsequent to that, I then got invited in to do the Microsoft Certified Architect certification, which was just after the SharePoint conference last year, where I had to go out, present a portfolio of the work that I'd done. Got abused by other architects, people like Spence Harbour, if you know him, Chemo Foss, and a few other people, and basically got through that review board. I'm also now a member of the NCSM instructor team, basically working on certifications for the SharePoint Server 2013 certifications around the Microsoft Certified Master and around the IT Pro and developer ones. And I'm also a SharePoint Ranger, which basically means I get to work for the product team to work on engagements around the world, which is a bit of fun. My email address is up there, so if you've got any questions, etc., don't hesitate to actually email me. I'll try and do my best to actually answer those. So, what we're going to do today is go through and talk about SharePoint workloads, then look at the platform level improvements, and then as part of the Part 2 of the session is actually go and have a closer look at the different service applications that we've got and kind of give you a bit of a flavour or a view about what these new things actually do. Now, to me, this was actually quite exciting. This is stuff that I've been working on since probably about December last year when I first got my first glimpse of SharePoint Server 2013. So part of the issue I've got here is what do I actually show you? Okay, because I could spend this whole TechEd going through everything in a lot of detail. In fact, we could probably spend the next 8 days easily going into the new features of in SharePoint. So the idea here is to give you a bit of a taste for what we've actually got around what's new in SharePoint Server 2013. So the first thing we're going to talk about is this thing called workloads. So what exactly are workloads? It's something that we tend to talk about from a SharePoint perspective around what type of functionality or what's the main business driver thing that you're trying to do with a particular product or with this particular product. And so just kind of group things together as to how we think about it. So we have things such as enterprise content management. So what this is basically about doing collaboration, doing records management, working with the product primarily from an intranet type perspective. So it's what's new in these particular areas that are quite good for the next version. We've also got web content management workloads, which is more around doing your extranet and internet-facing websites. So it's around the publishing features and how that actually works. We've then got social. So social is one of these big investment areas for SharePoint Server 2013. So a lot of the enhancements, a lot of the new stuff has gone into social. So I'm not going to go into too much detail around social because we've got a very deep dive session on tomorrow evening, which is going to go into a lot more around the social stuff as well. We've then got search, which is obviously that makes sense. So it's around how do you actually index, how do you do the query. And once again, this has been a huge investment area in SharePoint Server. So once again, light coverage on this as part of this session, and we're going to go into a lot more detail tomorrow afternoon again, and go in and actually pull away the layers and have a closer look at search. And then we've got business intelligence, which is how do you actually render up this information from a BI perspective. So the first thing we'll look at is from an enterprise content management perspective. So what's new here? One of the nice things that we've got here is that we've now got this concept of having site-level retention policies. So what does this mean? Basically, what we can now do is put a policy now against the site, so you can actually have things that apply to it. So what we can then do is say, right, what's going to actually happen if my project, how long am I going to keep this site available for before I can actually do something with it? Like, do I want to put a workflow against it? Do I want to have a retention policy against it, etc.? So basically, your compliance that you could do down at a document type or just down to a document level, we can now do at a site level and drive it through from there. So that's actually quite neat. We can also do this if we've got team mailboxes as well. So for those of you that saw some of the earlier session this morning, one of the new things that we can do is have a SharePoint site which has actually got mail from Exchange coming in and actually sitting within the SharePoint site as well. So that means from a compliance perspective, we probably want to be able to manage what are the policies associated with that as well. So hence that's what basically that works on. We've then got the Discovery Center. So this provides the ability to go out and do e-discovery work. So this is a completely redesigned portal where you can go out and actually go out and reach out and go out and discover cases that you may need to go out and find out that Joe Bloggs has done something naughty. So you've got to go out there and then search and find all the content that that particular individual has worked on, so you can then do something to work with it. So it becomes a single place where you can actually manage against that. Sorry, the sound's going a little bit. The other thing we can do too is this e-discovery capabilities. So once again, this is another huge investment area for SharePoint Server. So what we can do here is that we can go out, we can then go e-discovery against SharePoint itself. We can go out to the file system, and we can also now hook into Exchange. So from SharePoint, we can go out and do an e-discovery, reach out and find out what if that particular person gone out and touched. What we can also then do is export that out. So if we need to go out and do a hold from that, we can. We can export it out from the file systems, from SharePoint, as well as from Exchange, which is pretty cool and pretty funky. The other neat thing we've got is team folders. So this provides direct integration with Exchange. So the idea being here is that we can now share information as a team and work on it. So a lot of the times when you want to set up like a community or something like that, you want to have your emails that go with it. So what we can now do is actually have the emails go directly to that particular site where the rest of your community can actually look at and work out and share information against. All pretty funky stuff. So from a web content management perspective, we've now got better tool support. So what this basically means is that we're now kind of moving away from people having to understand exactly how SharePoint works in detail. So what we can then do is that they can now use familiar tools that they're used to. So they can go out, they don't need to use SharePoint Designer, they can use basically anything that they want to use that they're used to developing, these nice rich HTML style websites that they want to do. So there's also been some architectural changes below that to actually make this work as well. So we don't actually have div tags we don't have table tags in there unless it's actually a proper table. So everything's in there with proper div tags, etc., which makes it a lot easier for you to go in there and actually do your tool support, etc. on there. We've also got a lot of work around variations in content translation. So basically, excuse me, that's better. So what we can do with variations in content translation is we can provide the ability to automatically translate content as part of using variations. How many people here have used variations? Okay, a few people. One. It's not a common bit of functionality. But essentially what we can now do is that there's a lot of more work gone into it, where typically variations are used for having, for example, multilingual sites. So you want to have a bit of content which is like for English, could potentially be for Maori, or could potentially be for Chinese or something like that. So the way that you structure that is that you set up the content in one location and basically it gets propagated across to the others. Now the issue there is that we don't provide automated translation as part of SharePoint Server 2010. You have to go through and manually do that. What we can now do is actually use content translation to go through and automate some of those processes if you want to. We've done a lot of work around the search engine optimization as well. So we've done a lot of work on actually making sure that the URLs are a lot more cleaner, a lot more realistic as to what people are actually using. So some of those search engine optimizations, people get upset that things are actually buried under the pages library and then actually have the default .astx there. That's no longer relevant, okay? You can actually do different navigation to get around that particular issue if you actually believe that's going to affect your search engine optimization. The other thing that we've got there too is that we also provide the ability, or we provide a sitemap hierarchy, such that when your site gets crawled, the sitemap hierarchy is automatically provided there so that your search engines can come in and use that to help navigate your site as well. So once again, that should actually improve on your search engine optimization as well. We've got cross-site publishing. So this provides the ability where the limitation that we've got is if you've got content in one site collection, you can't typically get to it from another site collection in an efficient manner. Okay? So it's a non-constraint that we've got. Under SharePoint Server 2013, we can now go out and grab content from those other site collections and publish across them and basically make that a lot more efficient from the way that we actually go out and actually render that, get that information out. We've then got video and embedding. So with regards to videos, what we've got there is that we've also got the ability to use HTML5 rendering. So as part of the keynote, a lot of what you saw there was using HTML5 rendering to actually get that out and put that in. So that gets directly embedded into the browser and it makes it very easy to get those nice rich videos come through. Image retentions. So what we've got under this is that a lot of the time when we upload sites or images into a site, we usually get this great big image of what we want, and then we want to display a thumbnail of that particular image. So what has happened under traditionally, what that would do is that we just kind of shrink that all down to something quite small, okay, but it's still actually bringing everything through, which may not actually represent the image that you want. So what we can do is that we can basically say we want to have a different retention of that and say, right, I want this part of my image to actually show as a thumbnail. So we can actually have different versions of that based on what we want to do to make our sites more effective. We've got clean URLs. So a lot of work's gone into actually making those URLs a lot cleaner. So basically that also feeds into the managed metadata navigation. So what we can do here is that we can actually hook and use the managed metadata service application to make the URLs a bit more cleaner and a bit more user-friendly without having to go into, for example, the pages directory to render what our content is out there. So, from a social perspective, a lot of work's gone into this. So what we've got is that we've got the concept of having microblogging. So what we can do here is that what we're trying to do is make it more easy for people to do more social stuff as part of what they do from a corporate perspective. So we can share content, we can basically follow links, we can look at media, we can make things a lot easier. We can use our ACK tags, etc., to go in and actually go through and follow the actual people, the sites, the content, the conversations, the documents, etc. that are actually in there. It's pretty cool what that actually looks like. We've got activity feeds. So the other thing we've got here is that we can actually then link in and relate other content back to links, back into media, back into people, so we can see the actual activities that the people are doing. Then we get into communities. So we've got this new type of site called a community site. So this provides the ability to do self-service management, etc., and administration of that, where we can go through and moderate on it. So we can also do things like having achievements, we can have reputation, etc., associated with that. So we can actually, give our avatar type badges out to people based on what they do. So if you're trying to build up that community, what you've got internally, okay, this is quite a nice little funky way you can do it. Now, a lot of this is going to get covered tomorrow afternoon as part of the more social session. So I'm just giving you a bit of a flavour, a bit of a taste for what we've actually got here. Discussions, pretty straightforward. We've got a modern discussion board, one that kind of works now. You mean the other one didn't work? Okay, no comments about that. And we've got blogs. So we've got client integration, etc. And we can do categories, we can do comments, we can do moderation, etc. of our blog. So a lot of work and investment has gone into the social within SharePoint Server 2013. And search. Search. A lot of work has gone into search. Basically what they've done, or what we've done, I should say, is that we've now only got one search engine. So unlike SharePoint Server 2010, where you had Windows SharePoint Services Search, you had SharePoint Server Search, you then had Fast Search, and you had Fast for SharePoint Search. We've now got one search engine, okay? One search engine. So what they've basically done here is that they've taken the best out of both Fast and SharePoint Search and rewritten it to come up with a completely new search engine that we've got there. So it's a completely unified service architecture that we've got here. What this also means is that we, as part of the enhancements that we've done in there, we can also then personalize the search results. So what we can do is when you start running your queries and start looking for things, what actually happens is that it starts looking at what has been your search history behind the scenes. So based on what you've searched for before, or what other people have searched for, we get these nice little hints or other little bits of search information coming up and actually showing, what else could actually help as part of your querying exercises. We also get this very rich contextual review as well. So those of you that have implemented Fast used to get that nice little pop-up of the Windows, of the Office documents, etc. You now get that out of the box with SharePoint Server, 2013, provided that you've also got the Office web apps installed as well to get the previews of those documents. Now, a lot more work has gone into that as well, such that if you're doing for a search of a particular document or something and you've got a keyword in there, it will actually, as part of that little preview, do what we call a deep review of that and actually pop that particular page as part of the preview of that to make it easier to make sure it's more relevant for what you're actually trying to do your querying on. Okay? So we're going to go into search a lot more detail. In fact, Nick Habby's going to go into search a lot more detail tomorrow. So from a business intelligence perspective, we've got Excel BI. Okay? So this is where we're starting to use the Excel tools to do our analysis of that information that we've got out there. So we can do instance analysis using the Memory BI engine. We can use the Power View add-on to actually provide additional ability, additional stuff that's got in there. Excel services has also been ramped up as well. So we can now use Excel services to do some additional stuff, such as improve data explorations, do some field lists and fix wells, support, etc. Then we've got performance point services. So this provides the ability to have those interactive dashboards. So a lot of work's gone into that to provide that a lot easier to do your performance point, such as being able to take a dashboard from one environment and migrate it across in from development into test into production. Visio services, a lot of work's gone into that. Once again, provide the ability to take the Visio diagrams, render them up, interact with other systems, etc. And then we've got reporting services as well, which provides, with the integrated mode and actually having that displayed in there. Provided, of course, that you're using SQL Server 2012 to host the reporting services side. So, That's a bit of a workload, okay? I mean, that's the bit that you kind of see and visualize. But what you're probably more interested about is what's actually happened behind the scenes, okay? What's happened below the level of, what's making this product a lot better. So the first thing we're going to look at is, go through the different things that we've got. So we've got a lot more improvements around mobile, around sharing, around the application model, this thing called the distributed cache, Windows Azure workflow, which has been built into this as well, or provides the ability to hook into it, threaded storage. You're probably thinking, what's that? Something called request management, and then themes. Now, these are just some of the stuff that it's got out there. I mean, there's a lot more detail behind a lot of the other functions that are out there. And this is just a bit of a highlight, a bit of a taste for what's actually there. So, if we look at it from a mobile perspective, what we've now got is that we've got two different modes of being able to render out for mobile devices. We've got the classic mode and we've got the contemporary view. So basically, the classic view is what you got under SharePoint Server 2010. You got that funny little query string URL thing that you could manipulate and change, and you could actually get those coming out on your browsers that you had there. So that kind of worked, okay-ish. People didn't like it that much. A little bit of fun and games with that. But we've also now got this contemporary view. So this provides a completely different rendering of down to those particular devices. So in order to get this, what we need is that we need to activate a new feature called the automatic mobile browser redirection feature. And that basically provides the ability to detect what type of device is connecting into our SharePoint server environment. And if it's HTML5 capable, it will then render down HTML5 capable HTML to give that experience a lot better. Now, this doesn't really matter what type of device it is, okay? So if you've got something like an iPad, not that anybody has any of those, of course, that basically, they can use the HTML5 format, and hence they can actually go down using this contemporary view. We can also do some other things around this as well. So we can also go through, and if we want to do something a little bit different, we can target different designs based on the user agent stream. So we can effectively go through there and say, right, based on the user agent stream that comes through, you can check for things such as what type of device, where they're from, or basically whatever in the user agent. And then we can do different things with that. You could potentially have different master pages, etc., associated with that to work against this. So it's kind of like working the same way that variations did, which you could use not only for doing multilingual, but for devices. We can do the same thing here using the user agent string and different rendering for the different types of devices. So this makes it quite interesting, because what we can now do as part of our Office mobile web apps, we can actually get these, the Office web apps to run down on these mobile devices to give yourself another rich experience for actually interacting out to your SharePoint environment, which is pretty cool. The other enhancement around mobile is the ability to do push notifications. So what we can then do is say, right, here's my mobile device. I'm out there working away. I want to know when something actually changes on my SharePoint environment. So I can then say, right, I want to activate that particular feature. So when something happens on my SharePoint environment, it can do a push notification out to my mobile device for it to actually do something with that particular notification or event that's actually happening there. We then get into sharing, okay? So who found sharing in SharePoint Server 2010 complicated? Confusing. It wasn't straightforward. It's basically quite hard to actually manage. So the issue there is what type of permission levels do people actually require, and who has what particular permissions on a particular thing that you've got there. So, you can go in, look at the permissions, am I managing the site? Is it unique permissions on this particular library, on this particular item, etc.? It wasn't quite clear as to what it was. So what we've tried to do here is try and look and address some of these particular issues. So the other issue we had is, what was the access request that we've actually got here? So if I request something to it, I need to actually have that grant permissions right to delegate responsibility down to get them to do something. So it wasn't pretty easy to do. It wasn't quite straightforward. So what we've got under SharePoint Server 2013 is that we can now go through and share things such as a site, a list, a library, and we can do that from the ribbon, or we can go down and use the SVB and do it on the different items. So what it basically means is that the whole concept of sharing becomes a lot more cleaner, a lot more obvious as to what's actually being shared when we've got out there. So we can still get the access to Night page like we did before, and if somebody grants permission, right, they can then share it out. Otherwise, it basically gets handled out by the admin to then delegate down. The other thing we've got, which has been quite a significant change, is around the SharePoint application evolution. So if we kind of look back to what happened under SharePoint Server 2003, the question here is what exactly is an application? So SharePoint back in 2003 wasn't really an application as in itself, apart from having the ability to create different web parts. And so what people used to do was actually do the investments in building up portals and content. When we brought out SharePoint Server 2007, basically everything became an application. So then it became, right, how do I actually build out and actually go across top of this? And people used to go out and write a lot of custom code, etc. Now the issue with that though was that people wrote bad code, and that caused instability into the farms, and that used to cause a lot of headache and a lot of support calls. So what we decided to do there was, as part of SharePoint Server 2013, was provide the ability to give you a couple of different options around this. So you could still do the server-side code, you could then do sandbox solutions, or you could go for the CSOM model, the client object model approach, to actually do some stuff out there. Under 2013, which you've probably had some allusion to, is that we've now got this thing called applications. So what we're basically doing here is that we're redefining what exactly is an application. So it's basically a client-side use or interaction with the SharePoint environment where it runs outside of SharePoint. So what this means is that we can go through and actually start leveraging SharePoint, but from a client-side perspective, which means that we can actually go through and enhance and use things like CSOM to go out and actually interact with SharePoint in a different way. This doesn't mean that you can't go back and still do client, server-side code or sandbox solution code, but this basically becomes the preferred way of doing things, using applications which are running outside of SharePoint so they don't impact SharePoint to interact back into SharePoint to do things that we've got there. So we've got a couple of different ways we can do this. So one of them is a SharePoint hosted app. So technically the way that this works is that every application basically becomes its own subweb of a particular site collection. So the way to think about this is that an app actually equals our FT web that we've got there, which means that we've got a host header in order to get there, which means that we do need some DNS entries, etc., DNS wildcard entries to set up so it actually knows where to navigate through. So within the applications, we can still have features that are scoped there, but they're actually constrained to the scope of the FP web. And if you've got an application that's been deployed, it can only basically use, application that deploys features, those features are only available to that particular application. So that doesn't mean we can't actually go out and hook into other things. What we can then do is actually provide other web parts or other services to go out there to reach outside our particular client side or application to go out and do other stuff for us. The other caveat we've got around this is that as part of our SP web, application SP web that we've created, we don't allow users to go through and actually modify that in case they end up breaking the infrastructure behind the scenes. So when we go through and start designing our SP app applications that we've got to do, we've basically got three different approaches that we can do here. We can do it as a SharePoint hosted app, and that kind of makes sense where we've got the parent web, we've then got the sub-web underneath it, and we can reuse all the elements, etc., that we've got there. We can then get into some more advanced scenarios that we've got. So we can do developer-hosted apps. So these are applications which don't run within SharePoint. They can actually run outside of that as part of on a different service or a different service that you've got. We've also got a zero-hosted auto-provision app. So if you want to have things that are running up in the cloud, you can do those as well. So that makes it really interesting if you think about scalability or some of the things that you may want to be able to do. You can actually reach out there and do some different things on that. So we've got a session tomorrow where we're going to go through and actually look at creating a SharePoint application that's going to hook into Azure and do some other functionality that's in there, which should be a bit of fun. So, we've got this new thing called the distributed cache. So this is, the distributed cache is based on the Windows Server App Fabric distributed caching product. Basically, it's what's the word I'm looking for? It's based off the velocity cache, okay? So this is what used to be the velocity cache. This has now been brought in as part of SharePoint. So although it's part of the App Fabric cache, you can't actually upgrade to the full-blown product. It's actually a slight variation build of that. And essentially gets provisioned during setup and gets installed by default on all your servers. Now, the thing about this is that a lot of the features and functionality that we've got in SharePoint now rely on the distributed cache that we've got here. So things like the authentication tokens that go around the web front end, they work and use on this. The My Site social feeds, they use the distributed cache as well to actually go through and hold some of that information that is there as part of the social features that we've got. So this actually makes it quite interesting from an architectural perspective, in that the velocity cache or the distributed cache is actually quite memory hungry. Okay, it loves memory out there. So the sweet spot from some of the testing that's being done up in the product team is that it appears to be around about 16 gig for the server. Okay, so if you're actually going out there thinking about putting SharePoint Server 2013 out there, you may want to actually think about your specifications of your servers to make sure that your distributed cache is actually going to be available for that. There's also talk that it may actually need to be on its own dedicated servers as well. Okay, so that makes it quite interesting from a farm architectural design, where you may need to actually stand up dedicated servers with 16 gig of RAM just in order to handle your distributed cache scenarios. Also, I should point out that some of the stuff's still being worked out. We're still trying to understand the metrics, etc., behind the distributed cache and what's going to be the actual guidance behind this. The other interesting thing is that we've got Windows Azure Workflow. So what we've got here is that Workflow within SharePoint was basically under SharePoint Server 2010 was stuck to the 3.5 framework, .NET framework. What we've done now is that we're treating it now as a service, such that we can reach out to a Windows Azure Workflow, and so that it can then do whatever you want to do from a Windows Azure Workflow perspective, get your workflows to work in there. So then the issue then comes, where do I put Windows Azure Workflow? Well, it doesn't have to be as part of your server farm. It could actually be on a separate server, separate farm, or it could still be on your SharePoint servers if you want to. The other option we've got here too is that if we're doing stuff into the cloud, we've also got the option of saying, right, do we want to have it on-prem or do we want to do it off-prem? So if we do it on-prem, we basically have to set up a Windows Azure Workflow service, or if we do it off-prem, we then push it out and use Azure Workflow up in the cloud. So the idea behind this is that that provides the ability to do some real creative workflow stuff that we've actually got out there. So the way that this looks is that we've got SharePoint Server 2013 sitting there, and then we've got our standard stuff that we've got in there, such as our solutions, our content, our applications, our events, and our SharePoint object model. Now what's interesting here is that we've also got the W3 host. So that's actually the workflow engine that came from SharePoint Server 2010 that is still available there for you. So what this basically means is that your old workflows can still work, they can still run. You don't, as part of doing an upgrade, you don't have to go to the Windows Azure Workflow. You can still use the old stuff. In fact, what this means is that you get a couple of options. You can still develop your workflows under the old way, or you can go with the new way and start using the Azure Workflow. So if we do have an Azure Workflow, we can then have another farm out there which handles those services, and then we have a proxy which basically provides the communication from our SharePoint server farm to go out and talk to our Windows Azure farm. Now the way that this works is that we need to provide authorization into it. So one of the key things that's been baked a lot into SharePoint Server 2013 is OAuth. So for those developers that are out there, if you don't know OAuth, now's the time to start learning OAuth. Okay? So what is OAuth? This is probably the next question. I bet you everyone in this room has used OAuth, but they haven't actually realized it. How many people have installed a Facebook app? No? A couple? Okay, a good example is a Facebook app. That basically provides the ability to say that this Facebook app has access or authorization to access into your Facebook account. And that's basically providing the wire up between it. That is using the OAuth protocol behind the scenes to provide the authorization for that to work. And this is exactly how the Azure Workflow is actually doing this as well, where it's using OAuth to provide the access into the Azure Workflow and what Azure Workflow can then do back to the SharePoint environment. So basically what will happen here, it's really hard to see, I do apologize, but basically events get fired from the SharePoint server environment out to the Azure Workflow. It does the processing, and it then provides REST calls that come back into the SharePoint server environment for it to actually do something with that particular event, where you can then go through there and actually, manual with the Workflow Services Manager, actually do something with that particular workflow that you're doing there. All pretty funky stuff. And of course, Visual Studio, SharePoint Designer, etc. can be used to build these workflows. The other thing that we've got is threaded storage. Okay, so this is a bit more of an efficient document processing mechanism that works internally within SharePoint. So the idea being here, or the design goal behind this, is to reduce the number of round trips that actually happen. So what it basically does is that it shreds this document storage in SQL. And you're kind of probably thinking, well, how does that actually work and what does this mean? If we look at it from a SharePoint 2010 perspective, what we've got up on the right-hand side is that we've got the database, we've then got the SharePoint server farm sitting in the middle, and our client sitting on the left-hand side. What will happen is that if a user requests a document, it makes the request up to the SharePoint server farm. It then does a WFE request up to get the document from the database. That grabs the database, it does a full read of the document, brings it back down to the server, which then brings it down to the actual document, down to the client, and then they start doing their editing, etc. on that. So far, so good, okay? This is pretty common stuff. What happens then is that when they do the update, what happens from the client to the SharePoint server farm under 2010, it just sends the updates, okay? So that's one of the improvements of that under 210. Just the data updates and changes get sent back up to the server farm. What then happens is that that whole document is read back down from the database back down to the actual application server. It then gets merges the changes together and then sends that whole document back up into SQL again where it's been actually committed. Okay, so as you can see, there's a little bit of round tripping going on there where this document is coming back down from SharePoint, from the SQL database back down to SharePoint, down to the client, back up, and being merged and all that up there. Just a side question. If I've got a 1 meg document and I've got 5 versions of that document, how big's my content DB? 5 meg, yeah. So SharePoint doesn't actually save the deltas. Okay, so it's a key thing to be aware of. However, under 13, what basically happens is we get the user request, comes through, gets the document, pulls it back down, does the read back down, comes back down to the client, user updates the document. But now what happens is that when we send the update back up to SharePoint server, what it now does, it only sends the updates back up. So this is where we're actually shredding the storage that's actually occurring back up in the databases. So in theory, what should actually be happening here is that our size of our databases should be a lot less as a consequence that only the delta changes are actually basically occurring in there as they're committed into the actual database and storage. Okay? So it's quite a neat little thing, probably something you never see. Okay, so the question is, what happens when it brings the document down? Okay, so basically what's actually happening in the database is that the document's actually being shredded up there, so it knows which bits make up that whole document. So when it brings down the whole document again, provided that that's what the request that you did. Okay, good question. You're eyeing the car, I can tell. Okay, so the observation is, doesn't that just put more IO ops on the database server? Potentially the answer to that is yes. Okay, but as we know, SharePoint is very heavy on SQL Server, and so the IO ops is always a very strong consideration. Okay. Yep. It is what it is. Okay. Request management. Okay, so this is a new feature that's been brought in, or a new bit of functionality that's been brought into SharePoint Server 2013. So what we basically got the ability to do now is actually look at the request that is coming into the farm that we've got, and we can then customize the response based on different things, including the user agent that's coming through, what the URL that's coming through, and also potentially what the health of our particular servers are as well. So if you kind of think about this, a request comes in, we can now look at that particular information that's in there, and then we can say, right, which servers in our particular farm do we actually want to send that request to it? So the one question that usually comes up when we start talking about this is, isn't that load balancing? Well, kind of. Depends on what the load balancer is actually doing. Okay, so this is actually doing like a load balancing type activity, but it's a lot richer and a lot deeper integrated into the SharePoint servers. Because what this basically means is that we can actually understand what's actually happening as part of that request, which, what's the health of our particular servers, from a deep, detailed understanding on that, and then push it out to those appropriate servers that we've got. Now, this is a bit more of an advanced feature. So it's more for your bigger deployments, your bigger farm type scenarios. So it's unlikely that the majority of the people in this room will be using it. Not that you shouldn't be using it, but it's more for like the Office 365 deployments, where they can actually have dedicated servers, which are only going to host, for example. In fact, you may actually want to use it to think about it. You may have a scenario where you've got, like, the HR department have got their own web application. So what you could potentially do is actually put that web application, say that the web application, you only want to be processed on a couple of servers that are sitting over here, so you can then apply different SLAs to those particular servers. So using this request management, you can direct all of that traffic just to those two servers, which you can then manage separately or differently, that you've got there. Okay? So it's quite a neat little feature that we've got there. So essentially the way that this works is that we've got this request manager that comes in, and what it does is that it looks at first what are the web front ends that it may actually send this particular request to. So it's kind of looking at the health of those that it's actually got in there. It then does a filter to only the healthy ones that it's got in there, and then it selects a different type of server to actually physically send it to based on a whole lot of different routing rules, etc., that we've got there. So we can actually set up these rules around saying, we've got this concept of having server groups. We've then got a concept of having routing rules. We can then say, right, based on these particular routing rules, send up these particular server groups. So the example being like the HR department having their own servers. So we've also got this thing around having themes, okay? So kind of seen a little bit of that if you're at the session first thing this morning, where we can actually go through and have these real rich themes that we've got in there to make it easy to go through and style stuff. So it's based on XML now, which makes it a lot easier instead of the proprietary format that we had. And you no longer require to use PowerPoint to actually go through and actually create those themes. Just out of interest, did anybody actually do that? Yeah, there was a little theme tool as well. Okay, that went through that as well. Yep. And it was a little bit funky, a little bit different. So has everybody seen this, by the way? Nobody's seen it? Okay. So I'm just conscious of time, but what I'll do is I'll jump across into a little thing and show you how that actually looks like. So what we can do is this going to work? Okay, hang on a second. No. Trying to find the right session. Okay, sorry. session has gone to text, duplicate, get rid of that, close, don't know why script comes up, and it's not going to play ball. Okay, cool. Remote desktop. Oh, it's because it dropped out. Come on. I had this set up and it's timed out on me, so my apologies. Do that. Okay. Okay. So what I've got here is that I've got the new SharePoint 2013. I've got the central admin sitting up in here. And what I've got is I've gone through, created a couple of sites. So I've got a TechEd 2012 community site. So what I may want to do is go through and change the themes on this. So I go into my site settings. I can then go through and change the look. And these are my themes that I've now got available in here. Now, I really suck at doing UI. Okay, I'm much better doing stuff on the back end on the server side of things. So I can just go through and choose something like that. Okay, and I can go through and then change my color palettes, etc. that I've got in there, make it a nice little green. I could also, yeah. But I've decided that one of my holidays was to Samoa last year, so I'm just going to drag and drop. Oops, did that go through? No, it didn't. Okay. That should have. That's what was doing it. So if I drag and drop onto, no, it's not going to work for me. Change. I'm going to have to do it the old way. But it should have done a drag and drop onto there. So what I can do as part of that is actually change my background image on that. And I can then go through and do the try it, which provides the ability there to actually give me a preview of this particular theme that I've come up and styled because I'm so artistic. My children would say autistic. And see what it comes up there like. So I can actually, that was very quick and easy for me to do. And I can go, yep, keep it. Now that's my theme being applied, complete with my background image, etc. But I've actually got it applied to my TechEd site that I've got there. Pretty easy, pretty straightforward to do. So some of the other things we can do in here, if we click on, say, going into the home, it's completely changed the layout. What I can do as part of doing my sharing, which is part of my authorization, is I can go through and then say, right, I want to provide the ability to share this out to other people. So as part of what I can do here, test user 1, I get the IntelliSense 13, go it there, and now I can actually share that out for somebody that I've got out in that. If I've then got a document, team document, for example, what I can do is at this little flip this that I can go on here, and provided that this doesn't time out of me, I've also got the Office web apps running as well, so I get the nice little preview going. So I can get a nice little preview showing on that. And I can also see who I've already shared this with as well, so it provides a very quick and easy way to see, what I've actually given this out to, as an example. The other thing I can do too is I can now follow it as well. So what I can then do is hook up into events. So when somebody changes this particular document, I can then follow it if I wanted to, to see what they're actually up to, etc. That's there happening with that. Okay, and this Office web app preview is going to take a few seconds. Okay, and etc. Now this is also what's used for search as well. So if I'm doing for a search on a keyword, for example, that would have actually loaded up on that particular page that I had there. The other cool thing too, which I didn't show you about this, is that if I actually go into that particular document, I actually go into that Office web application view of it, and if you look at the URL, it's clean. Okay, unlike what we used to have under the old version with the Office web apps. Okay, you used to get this whole hieroglyphic, GUID, la-di-da thing, which used to look really entertaining when you emailed them to people. Okay, we've now got that pretty straight in, and I can then go in and I can edit the document and play around with that to my heart's content. Okay. Get rid of that. Okay, so that was a quick show of themes. So basically, what we've got in summary is that we've got the workloads that we've got out there. So a lot of work's gone into doing that around enterprise content management, web content management, etc. We've got a lot of platform improvements behind the scenes, which are there to build to support the actual product that we've got. So just from related content, okay? So this is part one. Part two, I'm going to go into the service applications and show you what are the new service applications, what are the changed service applications in SharePoint Server 2013. Then at the end of the day, we're going to go in to look at the new app model. So this is going to go through and give you a bit of an overview around, how do you actually start building some of these applications from both an Office perspective and from a SharePoint perspective. On Thursday, what we've got is that we've got the new click-to-run deployment. Okay, so we're going to take you through is how do you actually do deployment of the Office client out into your environment. We then got Debbie Island going in and doing the visualizing data with Visio. So just showing you how the Visio bits work more closely with SharePoint Server. We've got Alex then going into how you do manage your projects with SharePoint and Microsoft Project. In fact, it's predominantly Project, not SharePoint. And then we go into how do you actually create a SharePoint application using Azure. Okay, so this is going to be quite a nice little wire up to show you how do you create an application which actually sits out in the cloud and all that hangs together. We then get a deeper dive into social, a deeper dive into search. Then we get on Friday how we get the Microsoft IT folks coming and talk to us about how they actually migrated SharePoint 13 into the cloud, and then talk about how they actually manage the Office 365 environment, some of the issues that they've actually got in there. Then we've got the ASB Bank coming in talking to us about how they actually use SharePoint 2013 as being part of the TAP program that we've got. And then we're going to wrap it all up basically as how do you actually go through and upgrade to SharePoint Server 2013. So I've got my email address up here. Now, I have actually got two of these to give away. Okay? Now, I've been trying to think about the best way of actually giving these two things away. So what I thought I'd do is I'd open the floor up and give the opportunity to ask me any question on SharePoint. Okay? If I can't answer the question, you get to keep it. If, and only if, you can answer the question that I ask you. So we have a question. Yeah. Okay, so the question is, you've got AD groups, you're using an AD group to define your permissions. Can you see what the users are within that group? The answer to that is no. That hasn't changed since 2013. Yeah. Okay, I'll go right to the back there since you asked a question before. Oh, piss off. Right, okay, my question for you. Okay. Can the user profile sync database be can it be asynchronously mirrored or log shipped to another database server? That's not quite correct. Yes or no? Come and get it. I'll let you off. Yeah. It's only because I know Paul. Okay, another question for the other one. I'll go over here, sorry. Yep. Okay, so the question is, you do an upgrade. Does it go to the shredded storage as part of the upgrade? My belief and understanding is that it doesn't. Okay, because it's working on the updates that are coming back into the databases going forward. Okay, so good question. Anybody else got a question? This guy's had his hand up first each time.
The deltas that go back. So when you recall them, recall that document, do you just get the what's merged out of delta, or do you get the whole?
Okay. So the question. Okay. So the question is, if you've got multiple versions of the document and it's been shredded, what do you get back when you get the document back? You get that whole thing brought back as one version.
With all the shreds?
No. So, well, the shreds are actually stored in the database. Okay. So it basically is part of that processing. It pulls it back out as a single document. Correct. Correct. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Yeah, I'll go you, and then I'll go that other guy over there. Okay. Yep. Mm-hmm. You're from Indigen? Okay, I've seen your email. I don't actually know the answer to that question yet. Yeah, your email got forwarded on to me. I need to do some research into that. Okay, so my question for you is, what would be an easy question? Why can't I have the question so you can have it? There we go. Okay. So, well, that's basically me. Next session's in 15 minutes, okay, where we're going to go into the service applications. However, don't forget the resources that we've got out there. Quickly get the build done, and don't forget to do your eval. Much appreciated, and see you in 15.